This is the Analysis in Change with Nathan Williams and Neil Kieran.
Welcome to Analysis in Chains. I'm Nathan Williams, and today I've got Zhuling Chen, the co-founder of Aelf. Aelf is a online blockchain-based platform for cloud computing. They're using a series of side chains based on a main chain in order to have their nodes compete with Amazon for cloud computing architecture. And a very interesting project in use of blockchain, and we're going to talk a bit about that today. Thank you, Zhuling, for joining us.
Hi, Nathan. Thank you for your time. Very happy to be here. And yeah, this is Zhuling, co-founder of Aelf. We are the first decentralized cloud computing platform.
So tell me a little bit about what this means, decentralized cloud computing. Now, most people, they think of cloud computing, they think of Amazon Cloud Services, they think of a data center maybe run by Google that they would connect to. How is Aelf different than that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. Let's look at all the blockchains that are in the space right now. So if we consider Bitcoin as the first generation that showcases a blockchain can achieve storage of value, we think Ethereum is the second generation which has demonstrated the capability of general computing in a decentralized way. So how we see Aelf is the evolution of a generic computing platform in a decentralized way. What we have added on is instead of just having all the computing power leveraging one computer, Aelf in fact enables a node to be run on a cluster of computers. So what it means here is Ethereum, the computational power for Ethereum is one computer, but on Aelf, this will be on a group of computers. So that significantly improves the computational power to execute more complicated smart contracts in the future.
So as I understand it, with Aelf, what you're doing is that every smart contract is essentially its own blockchain. Is that sort of an accurate way of describing it? And then you have a main chain that then would keep track of all of these side blockchains, each one for their own smart contract?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's correct. So in our architecture, what we have seen is if in the future, a blockchain system is going to host thousands of smart contracts, putting all of them on one blockchain is problematic because they're going to fight for the same resources. And if one smart contract jams the whole system, the other smart contracts have to wait. So take CryptoKitty as one example. When CryptoKitty gets super popular back in last December, the other applications on Ethereum cannot go through, and the transaction fee gets really expensive. So we call this as a problem of resource segregation. What we see out in the future is that actually we should have a more structured way to host smart contracts on different chains. So those are the parallel chains that will be that can separate the different smart contracts, so they can go in through without interfere with each other.
Okay. When you're talking about different blockchains for different smart contracts, like CryptoKitty's running on its own contract, that makes sense because you're segregating resources, you're keeping CryptoKitties from slowing the entire chain down. But is there a trade-off, I guess, is what I'm wondering, because you need your own sort of cluster of computers for this blockchain that's doing this one smart contract. But at the beginning, every smart contract, every new project is going to be small, right? Mm-hmm. And so how do you incentivize enough nodes to run your particular project so that it's still secure.
Yeah, so absolutely. You're absolutely right, Nathan. So if we have dedicated nodes just to serve each individual side chains, that will be very expensive, and also this will not reach the scale of economy at the very beginning. So what we're going to do is, among all the side chains together with the main chain, we would actually propose to have a merged mining at the very beginning, meaning that there is going to be a group of dedicated nodes that will verify all the transactions among all the side chains and the main chain. So in that case, it reach a pooled security within the whole ecosystem.
Oh, that's actually a really interesting solution. So it starts out as similar to Ethereum and then branches out as the system grows, is what you're saying.
Yeah, so in this case, actually, you can consider all the side chains as virtual side chains because they do not have their dedicated nodes, but rather have a pooled nodes that serves all of them.
So if you've got pooled nodes, and forgive me, this is just me trying to wrap my mind around it. It's an interesting and technical project, and it's advanced, it's fascinating, and it's a little bit confusing. Just so I understand. Going forward, let's say in 3 years, when the system is mature, you've got side chains running each in their own parallel nodes for the large projects. Will there still be a pooled shared node for new projects that come up so that they can get started? Or how will that work for new projects that need their own chain but only have like a couple of computers dedicated at the beginning?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if we think about the whole ecosystem, let's say in 3 years, right? So first, we're going to see a big group of chains together with the main chain. So these are the ones that will be done merged mining. So they share the same group of nodes as the public domain. So this will be done under a dedicated proof of stake. So all these chains will share the same amount of nodes. Okay, so along with that, because in our system, we do provide a sidechain template, which allows users to customize the consensus protocol, which means they can have their own number of nodes. So in that case, besides the merged mining group, so there could be some other side chains that will be running under POW or under POS, as long as they have the sufficient number of nodes. Then they can be connected to our ecosystem. And additionally, there will be a third group of sidechains, which is leveraging our template, but they may decide to do it as a private chain. So we do foresee, some of the large corporates may want to do it such a way, but in this case, they can leverage our architecture, so they do not need to build up their own blockchain from scratch. So for these ones, they will be under this. They will provide their own nodes, and they can be indirectly linked to our ecosystem. So in a nutshell, we are going to have a big group of side chains will be running under the same dedicated nodes altogether. Then we could have some customized side chains, either running on POW or running on private chains. Using our technology.
That makes sense. Now, here's a question, and maybe this is the most basic question there is, and betrays my understanding of the white paper or lack thereof. But is this cloud computing distributed system that you have built predominantly for blockchain-based projects, or could I run any app off of this? Similar to Amazon Cloud.
Could you repeat the last part?
Is it similar to Amazon Cloud? Could I just upload any app that I wanted to run, similar to like Heroku or something like that, where I had an online cloud computing thing that I needed to run, anything would run on this? Or is this specifically built for running blockchain-based projects?
Yeah, so this is specifically for blockchain distributed applications. So what we mean by the cloud computing here is that in this whole ecosystem, we're going to have dedicated nodes. So in the past, most of the blockchains, every node is one single computer. So in our case, each of the dedicated nodes is actually running on a cloud. So this is organized in a cloud computing architecture. So this makes our nodes scalable. You can add more computers, so that also adds more computational power. But if you simplify this, if you consider, this is one blockchain, we're adding a scalable nodes. This will look like same architecture as Ethereum. So this will also work for all the dApps on a blockchain.
That makes sense. And I tell you, one of the challenges that a lot of the companies that are based on developing core technologies, sort of like you are, one of the challenges they're facing is adoption of understanding among people. I mean, you talk to anyone in a crypto conference, and you'll hear over and over again that crypto and blockchain is in the same position as the internet was in the mid or early 90s, that it's very technical, a lot of potential, a lot of investment going into it, but still difficult to understand for those who aren't deep into the tech. And I'm wondering, how has it been for you, who you are definitely engaged in this deep tech, core technology structure building? How has it been, the understanding of your project and the education required to get people on board?
You're absolutely right. I think we're at a stage, there's still a gap in terms of what's really happening at the infrastructure level versus the understanding for the average users. Especially, most of the projects are still under development to launch their testnet, which is the same situation for us. So I have been given talk in several conferences and also did our own meetup. I do face challenges sometimes, to make it simple and easy for people to understand. So that's also the reason that I'm very happy, we have this opportunity to talk about it in your podcast.
Yeah, thank you. And I always say that if you can help me to understand it, then it'll probably help most people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're based in Singapore, correct?
Right.
What was the decision behind doing this project out of Singapore, as opposed to one of the many other jurisdictions that people tend to run blockchain out of?
Okay. So my tech partner and myself. We came up with this whole architecture back to last July. So he lives in Beijing, while I have been living in Singapore for over 10 years. So that was the time that we look at, what is the most crypto-friendly place. And also in terms of regulation, which has more clarity. So a couple of options occurred to us. Number one was Switzerland. Number two is Gibraltar. And number three is Singapore. So we decided to do Singapore because, first of all, I've been living here and I do understand that the government has a strong preference to encourage blockchain technology. And also the authorities has been pretty friendly to blockchain projects. That's why if I look at the whole ecosystem, a lot of projects originated from China, even Korea, Europe, and US have decided to set up their legal entity in Singapore. And I think that has served us pretty well.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? How there's these hubs that are forming now, and they're very different from the tech hubs of the past. It used to be that if you wanted to start a tech startup or any digital scalable startup, you had to have a presence in Silicon Valley, or then in a couple of years later, maybe London or Paris would have been a place. Berlin had took their place on the stage, but now we're seeing very, very different hubs for startups because of blockchain. And I'm wondering do you feel that we're going more towards a new set of hubs, but still centralized, or if we're going to see just more distribution and more globalization completely for the entire tech industry?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really fascinating question. Just based on my personal observation, I do see that we have come to a stage where it gets more decentralized in the blockchain space. We are seeing a ecosystem that already has a couple of regulatory hubs. So Singapore could be considered as one, Switzerland could be considered the other one. And also we've seen different tech hubs emerging. So that could be actually Berlin, that's where you're living. We've seen a lot of good developers there. China has a lot of technical development happening as well. And Silicon Valley still is probably one of the most, is probably housing the most number of good developers as well. And meanwhile, there are also trading hubs. That means, because cryptocurrency is about liquidity, it's about trading. So we have seen a lot of trading hubs are in different countries. Korea actually could be seen as one of the most active trading hubs in the world, followed by Japan and some other countries. So you see, we have different locations for regulatory place, technical place, and also trading places. That also means that for any projects to succeed, you need to manage on all those fronts. That exactly leads to a global operation that needs to be done from day one for any crypto projects.
Yeah, and when you're talking about this sort of globalization, it's almost like it is bypassing or leapfrogging existing trade agreements or country boundaries that we would normally think of, and it seems to me that it's that this process is only accelerating. I'm wondering if the regulatory frameworks and the trade agreements are ever going to be able to keep up, or if we're going to see sort of a migration of regulations to blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do see that blockchain is accelerating the whole process of globalization. In the past, during the internet era, we already seen that actually companies have already go beyond country borders. If we think about Facebook, it's already pretty global, but it's bounded by the legal entities under the brand name of Facebook. I would see blockchain is actually taking one step further. So right now, there's no clear legal entity in such a case. But people are bonded or united all together under the same technology, the same value proposition, the same ideology. And because of the trading and also because of the currency goes beyond country borders. So it gets global much faster right now.
Now, when we're talking globalization, it's always a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, there are groups of people who are really against it for good reason, because often you'll have things like undermining local labor markets, instability in people's incomes or job security. But on the other hand, you do get the ability to access a wider list of goods, a wider array of investors. So it really can be both good and bad. I'm wondering, when we're talking about globalization in terms of blockchain, one of the factors is the fact with many blockchain projects, they're open source. There's no clear centralized regulatory environment. Not all of them are like that but Bitcoin is the go-to project where who do you go after? There's no one group that is in charge of Bitcoin. And as we see more DAOs being launched, then the question becomes, well, are they just going to take over and force a globalization structure on the entire tech industry that we just have to adapt to and can't be stopped, that just goes beyond borders?
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's a very complicated question. I don't think I have I don't think I have a direct answer to that. But I just share some of my views towards that. So if we look at
I don't expect you to have the answer, Zhuling. It's sort of an open question that I think we're going to be just having to think about and wrestle with going forward.
I will just
please
share
no, you must answer.
So I see
sure.
In the internet business in the past, actually it has already it pushes the globalization of information. We have in human history we have never seen such a free flow of information across the world. But what after that we also see the regulations about protection of IP, regulations about data center, all those things gradually come in place. But nevertheless, it definitely pushes information to flow more efficiently and more freely to everyone. If we consider blockchain as the next level, or the next, if we consider blockchain as the internet of value, where actually we do allow values, or in this case could be considered as currency to flow more freely. I think it kind of follows the same trend. First start with no control and no clear roles and responsibility at the beginning, but gradually we'll see more, consensus on how this industry should be regulated, and how all the countries, all the organizations can work together to make it a more healthy space. I still believe that blockchain is still at the early stage. So when I talk about globalization of blockchain, I'm more referring to the market awareness and the education to the mass. As we see, starting from last year, blockchain started to appear on all the mainstream media. People were talking about it. So for such a new technology, I think this is definitely good that people start to be aware of it.
Now, you told me before we started recording, you said you were recently in San Francisco.
Yep.
Correct? How have you seen a change over the years with respect to adopting, blockchain, basically? Is it really trying to catch up to become a hub, or would you say it already is?
Yeah, I would definitely think that San Francisco has become one of the hubs for blockchain. I think compared to last year, there was no clear guidance from the U.S. government, especially from SEC. So most of the companies are still being very cautious to getting into blockchain field. But starting from last December, that's after SEC has issued a couple of directives. So we start to see more activities happening in San Francisco. So this time when I was there, we have met a couple of large corporates, including Airbnb and Uber. All the engineers are actually very actively to attend different crypto talks. VCs are also talking about it all the time. So this kind of reminds me of the same level of hype that happened during last August in Asia, especially in China. So I think US, once they gets more clarity on the regulation side, all the companies, all the engineers will act very quickly to get into blockchain.
Well, here's another open question. I mean, when you're talking about companies like Airbnb and Uber, they are the disruptive companies of a few years ago. They've completely transformed whole industries, but they are very centralized. And I would say that they're probably at risk themselves of being disrupted by these decentralized counterparts that exist on the blockchain. And I'm wondering, do you think that they will be able to transform their model to be able to support the people that they have if they move into blockchain now?
I think definitely there is an innovator's dilemma that, in order for the established companies to transform themselves, they always will feel a bit of struggle in terms of, okay, do I need to lose some of my existing revenue? Do I need to lose some of the bargaining power that I have right now and look for a new stream of revenue and new business model? That's always a struggle, and it's unclear whether that's something that all the companies can make it work. But on the other hand, I've never seen any other industry except the internet business that has been evolving so fast and keep on changing their business model and learning new things. So on that front, I think the internet giants definitely has a good shot in terms of embracing blockchain technology and create something new out of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. The phrase that comes to mind was from the Facebook handbook, where it says, if we don't invent the thing that kills Facebook, someone else will. And I think that generally internet companies do have that mindset of we've got to reinvent ourselves and constantly be doing it. But I mean, at the same time, I still think of the Blockbuster Netflix deal that fell through. It's the classic thing people point to is that Blockbuster had the chance to buy Netflix for $1 million and they didn't. Mm-hmm. But really, they couldn't. They couldn't buy Netflix because it would have destroyed their existing business model. They would have gotten sued by their franchisees, and so then, the question will come down to not whether their Airbnb and Uber and all of the other big tech giants are going to be willing, but whether they're going to be able to change their business model, or if it will destroy them in the process. And I think that's just going to be an open question.
I think this definitely will shake up the whole the existing ecosystem. There will be guys who manage to transform themselves. Of course, some new startups will definitely take this opportunity and challenge the the current the giants in the market. So definitely we will see some new winners in the market. But regardless of this, for blockchain, I think it's still important, to improve the current infrastructure, because number one, the speed is the performance is not there yet, and also the whole architecture is not achieving a resource segregation. So that's exactly what we're working on, and it'll be interesting for. So basically, we want to empower any companies, be it the large giants or the new startups. So all of them can start to innovate on top of Aelf.
Well, it's companies like you that are going to be the sort of the foundation, and it really does show how early phase we are in blockchain. The fact that people are still working on the core infrastructure, and the protocols that are going to be running this Internet of Value going forward, and it's not clear which will be the dominant protocol. But it sounds like you've got a really interesting and unique approach, and you've got a good shot. Tell us what's going to come up in the next couple of quarters for Aelf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So our plan is to launch our testnet by end of June this year. So that's where people will be able to look at our whole architecture. We're going to have the main chain ready, and also a couple of side chains to demonstrate how side chains can host smart contracts, how the main chain can record all the transactions on the side chains, and how merged mining, meaning that the one group of nodes can mine for the whole ecosystem. That's where people can start to test it out and feel the advantage of separating smart contracts on different chains, so that they do not jam each other. So moving towards the end of this year, that's where we'll start to add our on-chain governance model, so that token holders can make certain decisions in the whole ecosystem, such as adding new features, such as permitting some new chains to add into the ecosystem. Because we do believe this needs to be a fast prototyping process. So we make things work. We see what has been done right and what needs to be improved. Then we use the voting system to make the changes fast. So by end of this year, that's where our mainnet will be ready. And we do expect a couple of D apps will be running on top of Aelf by then.
Well, it sounds very exciting. I wish you the best of luck in your development. And I really hope it takes off. Zhuling Chen, co-founder of Aelf, thank you very much for joining me today. And what's the website that people can go and find out more information? Is www.aelf.io.
That's right.
All right, aelf.io. So thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day.
Thank you, Nathan. Have a nice day.